Today, we're going to be talking about improving inner silence. And I am so delighted to announce on Wednesdays with Willa, my podcast show today, that I have as my guest Mark Thomas. He's a wonderful spiritual teacher. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Willa. Good morning.
Um, we're so excited to see what you have to share with us today about improving inner silence. It's something that's so necessary in today's time. And for those of you who are not familiar with my podcast show, it's Wednesdays with Willa, and I am Willa White. I am your host, a registered Lily Dale medium. And this show happens weekly on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Time in USA. And you can tune in on my Facebook page, which is Willa White Medium. So you can like and share and follow and get the latest information about those things. And as I said, today our topic is about improving inner silence. And we have Mark Thomas. Mark Thomas is a co-founder of the Fellowships of the Spirit, and he's a very popular spiritual teacher. He's had a lot of wonderful life experiences and spiritual experiences. And so, Mark, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself so they have a better sense of who you are?
Well, I started out as a child, and
I was born.
that was a big announcement there. No, seriously, I grew up in Illinois in the Midwest I'm a child of the '60s, and I was raised in a family, a very devout Methodist family, and I had I was one of those kids with a lot of questions. And so in youth group, I would ask the minister questions like, Jesus says, these things I do and more you shall also do. And yet I'm not seeing it in the churches. What's up? Why do we not have this? Why do we not learn this? Why do we not have it as part of our worship? And there was not satisfactory answers to those questions, for me anyway. And so I started searching, and I, like many people who go through a growth period, which we need to do as young people, I got into a rather cynical phase and kind of rejected more an agnostic than an atheist religion. And then I ran into something called transcendental meditation in the early 70s or mid 70s and started doing meditation every day. And then boom, all the pieces started coming together, and things started to make sense both from my growing up years and the cynicism that I had rolled into as part of my growing went out the door with that, because I really found out that depth of spirituality that I was seeking, that I was reading in sacred texts, really existed. And it was an experience we can all have. It's as near to us as the nose on our face, and yet we weren't getting taught in that in where I grew up. So that sent me on decades long, continuous decades. Here I am in my mid 60s now, and still learning, still growing, still searching, seeking Eastern teachings, Western teachings. I've had many teachers, I've read so much material, as well as had years and years now of daily meditation experience in the quiet that you referenced here in the beginning. And that, I think, is probably the most important aspect to all of my growth, body, mind, and spirit, has been the fact that I've made that commitment to meditation on a daily basis. And it really, really is the foundation of what I do, no matter what I do in the outer world.
Yes, and it's something that is sustaining you to be in that prayer force, to be in that communion with the divine, because you are a spark of the divine, as are we all.
Yes, we are. We hide it pretty good at times, but we are.
And it's important to cultivate that interior experience. It's that infinitely inward, infinitely outward experience that we're having in meditation, and when we're communing with that soul that is our connection point with God at all times.
Mm-hmm. Well put. Yeah, I think one of the most profound texts I found, which is so simple and so revealing, is the first 4 sutras of what's called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, a book that was put into written form around 2,000 years ago. And it was a condensation of all the various yogic thought, various yogic teachings into one volume, very small volume, because it's just short statements. And I'll give you the first four, because the first four really encapsulate the whole aspect of what we're discussing today. And the first one is, and now the teaching, at this auspicious moment, the teaching of yoga begins. The second, yoga is the settling of the mind into silence. The third, once settled, you are established in your essential nature, which is unbounded consciousness. And the fourth, unbounded consciousness is usually overshadowed by activity of your mind. That encapsulates so much of my experience, my learnings, and it is really, you can read right through those in the Yoga Sutras and think, oh yeah, whatever, but it's what you need to realize that the Eastern writings, the Eastern teachings, quite often the most important pieces are not at the end or a big crescendo building up to an end. They're at the very beginning.
Yes. The going back to basics is always essential when you're learning something and when you're remembering something on deep primordial levels as well. And I think that it accesses in those four statements the essence of what to do. And if we can breathe that in and live that fully, then we're into that mystical space that everybody wants to attain. By making it more simple, we actually enter into it more easily.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was the leader of the TM movement, used to say, that which is true and real is simple, natural, and life-supporting. And through time, I think that's been one of the touchstones I've used, is keep it simple. Keep it simple. It doesn't need to be complex, and it's so easy. I have a dog that is now in here deciding she needs to be a part of this conversation. Sophie, lie down. Sophie, lie down. Because we're having a conversation
everywhere.
and she's not part of it. She decided to come in here. You need to lie down.
Yeah. This is what's happening around the world. Pets are running the world. They're joining in on all the video conferencing.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, she's just decided she's gonna obey, so we're good.
Good. Well, on my show, I try to feature something that really it helps people and enhances their life and their spiritual development. And we focus a lot on spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, and more. And especially with the current issues that people are really feeling they're faced with, they're having an opportunity to go into that retreat within them in their homes, but that idea of going into the retreat of themselves, going back into what the soul has to say and what the soul reminds them in terms of their purpose here on earth, and how to fully experience that instead of the external world focuses that are on whenever we turn the TV on or go on social media at this time. So it's really essential that people get these core values and focus in on that inner silence, so that they're hearing what God has to say in those moments and being in the flow of God's will.
Yeah, it's so easy. There's so many distractions in our world today. It's become exponential with all the electronic devices that we have around us. It used to be, when I was growing up, we had a newspaper that came in the morning and you could read the news then, and then you had the Walter Cronkite type news for not even a half hour in the evening. And that's all you needed for a day. And, life went on quite well. And now with this explosion of 24-hour news, 24-hour weather, people just get sucked in because and it's not news, most of it's opinion anyway. So and so is the weather. There's an awful lot of opinionating on the Weather Channel as well. So they keep you into these so-called conversations where you're not conversing. You're just observing. You're sitting there on the outside looking in, and yet you think because it's in your living room, you're part of a conversation. So people get sucked into this huge distraction of this stuff, whether it's on a handheld or on a computer. It doesn't matter. And so folks get so distracted, so caught up in what I call the materialism of our age. And when you look at that, there's very little about spirituality in any of that. In fact, there's an awful lot of fear direction, whether it's Weather Channel or the news opinion channels. It's all about fear, because they know fear sells. Fear sucks people back in, back in, back in. The lowest common denominator of our society is fear, right? And right now it is rampant.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a time when people need to get discharged from that for periods of the day and do their life in a different way than they have known it and done it. Some people get to work from home. Some are totally out of work. Some are engaged on the front lines of this in hospitals and don't have a lot of time for anything because their work schedules are so demanding, and many of them are separated from their families as well. So when they do have downtime, they're very lonely and isolated, no place to really be in human contact that they've had and experienced all the time. So we're in a time of tremendous transition, but there's also moments where we can structure in solitude in the midst of all of that.
Yeah.
And turning off the electronics, stepping away, putting yourself in a comfortable chair, sitting down, doing some things that'll bring you into that silence I referenced earlier, get you out of your mind, out of your emotions, out of all of the stuff of our modern life, and back into your own heart and your own stillness. And when you get there, you know you're there, because you feel it. And quite actually, when you get into that depth of that experience referenced in the Yoga Sutras, that unbounded consciousness, you don't know whether, at the time, you don't know whether you were awake or you were asleep. And I'll tell you how you know the difference. After you've had a sleep or a nap, you wake up, you're groggy. When you get up from a meditation, you're alert. Big difference. And you don't need to judge, and you shouldn't judge a meditation, especially a silent one, during the meditation. People like to get into that trap of, well, I didn't meditate. I sat down to meditate, but my brain just went the whole time. And bottom line is your thoughts are not your foe during meditation. They are your friend. And that is your body throwing off stress, throwing off all of the things you're walking around with. So sometimes when you sit to meditate, you don't feel like you settled. Aha, here's the thing though. That's the wrong time to make the evaluation when you're in it. When you get up and you start walking around, are you feeling more settled than when you sat down to do it? It's that reference point you need to look at, not, oh, my brain was busy the whole time, I couldn't shut it off. You didn't need to shut it off. It needed to run. As the body unwinds, there will be corresponding thought. That has to happen. So as your body unwinds, even if it's settling down, there's going to be thought, because you're releasing the tensions, the stresses, the knots, if you will, that you've accumulated over the day or week or whatever it is that your period of time since you last sat for the quiet. And when you get to that space, you get up and you start walking around, you start feeling that stillness, being in the world but not of the world kind of feeling. That stays with you for a while, but if you don't meditate regularly, what ends up happening is that goes away quickly and you get wrapped up again in all of the stuff of life. But when you sit down again, you get to dive back into that quiet that's so right there for you, waiting for you to come back to it. And the more you do that, the more you take that out into the world of activity. It walks with you through your day.
Mm-hmm. And by doing that, you're embodying prayer in those moments.
Yes.
And you have a sustaining life force that you're continually tapping into for relief and comfort and peace.
Yes.
And so it's essential to have a meditation practice. And even if you're not able to sit for an hour or more on a meditation, I learned early on in the early days of my motherhood to take it whenever I could, in little snatches, even if it's just 5 minutes of peace, of breathing, of centering oneself, and allowing the illusions of the world to pass and allow the light in during those moments, to the divine presence being very strong and sustaining in those moments to refresh and keep you focused on that spiritual peace you want to have in your everyday life. You're going to have moments of crashing up against other people's energy, and that's why it's important for you to be centered in yours, so that you can not be in that reactionary mode, that you can be in spiritual response as much as possible. And that quieting that you're talking about is so essential for that process.
It is. Yeah, most people think, oh, if I have to have a lot of time to meditate. No, as you just described, Willa, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, a couple times a day, even just to set things aside. Your little one takes a nap. You get a few moments of quiet, instead of getting all the other stuff done you need around the house, you can just say, okay, I'm going to take 10 minutes of this time, even 20 minutes of it, and just be still. And then I can get up and do the other things I need to do.
So, Mark, in your opinion, how effective are what I call working meditations? So many times if I'm having to clean the dishes or clean the house, or if I'm having to rake up things outside, I try to use it in those moments of prayerful, the things I needed to uproot in myself that are not serving me in the highest and best good. I use it in those moments to let those go, to let them wash away, and also to pray for any of those little snaggly things in those moments.
You've just described beautifully Buddhist mindfulness meditation.
Yes.
It's exactly what that is, and it works very well. And it's a thing you can do. The Christian mystics all called it prayer without ceasing. Yeah. Pray without ceasing. One of the things I've been doing this last week, now that we've had a spring this year, what a concept. We've been going from winter to summer lately around here. This year we have a spring, so I've been out working, and we're going to have a vegetable garden this year, which we haven't had in 20 years. Been busy doing other things. Anyway, what I've been doing is working in the dirt, right? And while I'm out there in the garden working, I'm praying for all kinds of people who I know need prayer. Specific people in general, but I'm also looking at myself, and that whole mindfulness thing you described quite well. I don't need to rephrase it. It's time to do your own introspection, time to do your own soul searching. What's working, what's not? What do I need to be carving out of my life, and what do I need to be bringing into my life more and more, especially when we're on the other side of this time we're in right now?
Yes. So improving that inner silence can happen in a formal meditation arrangement, but it can also happen in mindfulness activities that we're doing to reach that still point within us. My mother and I had a conversation about this, and I think it came up in a past show. That's about calming the waters. And that idea of when Jesus was in the boat with the men, and he calmed the waters, and we have to do that within ourselves, figuratively, I guess, but also quite literally, energetically. We calm the waters, and we get into that calmness. We're so fortunate to live here on Cassadaga Lake, and many times our lake here is like glass. It is like a mirror surface that when you glide in a kayak, it feels so delicious to move through the water, and there are no worries in those moments. You're just floating, and you're buoyed up by this beautiful water that surrounds you. And so sometimes
it's a great metaphor for what's already inside.
Yes, and so there's that interior experience of calming the waters within yourself, that you can have that experience no matter where you are. You may not be living on Cassadaga Lake, but you have that beautiful spiritual poise within you that you can reach in those moments of silence and communion with God in a higher way.
Very true. Solitude is a concept that's aligned with spirituality, but it's so much more, because solitude is an experience of being comfortable in your own skin. Okay, and so many folks walking around today are looking, in our postmodern society of what's the newest, what's the latest, what's the greatest. Well, I need to be up on this, I need to be up on that, so I'm really with it, right? And of course, stuff is coming faster and faster and faster. That is a fool's errand. You really can't get there from here. You will always be behind the curve if you live your life that way. And so the need for solitude, being comfortable where you are, who you are, what's going on in your life, and not only just comfortable with it, but enjoying it. I mean, really enjoying it and getting into the depth of it and being in the space of that and setting aside, again, the other distractions, the mental things, the shouldas, couldas, wouldas, oughtas, all that kind of stuff that people do to themselves. It's like, yeah, that's a waste of time. You know, Abraham Lincoln had this saying that I love: never teach a pig to sing. It's a waste of time and it'll annoy the pig. And that's kind of how it is with our minds. You know, it's like we're trying to jam it into a box and it's going, forget about it, not going there. And yet when we just step away from all of that and just be still, it's like big sigh. Oh, wow, I didn't need to go there anyway. And just be with it and be still. As you mentioned, getting out on the lakes on a kayak. Yeah, there's a stillness out there. That is the perfect metaphor. You know, you get out on the water, you're just floating and the waves come by and the breeze and the sun and you just, it's that moment, you know, that you can get to, and you get into that solitude, that quietness and the comfort inside your own being. And we need so much more of that because there's not enough space for, you know, people talk about being compassionate with others and so forth. We need to be compassionate with ourselves too, because out of our comfort and compassion with ourselves, we have much deeper well to draw from to distribute compassion to others. And that comes from being comfortable, being still, and being aware of who you are and going, yeah, I am good right here, right now. Am I finished product? Oh no, it's a journey. No destination here, but I am comfortable in my own skin and I like staying in that spot. There'll be times when I can't be, but I always like to come back to that space. Yes.
So it's a matter of self-care.
Oh, on top of other care, yes. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So in terms of tips for improving that inner silence, you know, those 4 that you mentioned, I think are supremely worded in many ways. But for people who typically have that monkey mind, as you said, well, you didn't say monkey mind, but that idea of the chatter that goes on with them, I like that you say it's not about necessarily getting that to stop in a focused way. It's about allowing that to purge as it needs to, kind of a venting, right? But there's a part where people can get into a habitual complaining mode. So any tools or tips for people about that?
Well, there's several things that when I teach meditation with folks, some of us need a visual focal point to intersperse with the thoughts. So we oftentimes will teach people to imagine a point of light on the horizon and then bring it towards you. So it's just out in front of you, and you can just, with your eyes closed, even just bringing your light, your mind's eye to that point of light. Some people that works really well. Others, where TM has been very effective is with mantras. Mantras are using a sound, internal sound, that counteracts with the sound of the voices going on in our head, you know, our internal voice and the stuff, the chatter. And that is a great counterbalance to that. Some people find that effective. Others, it's the breath, paying attention to the in and the outflow of the breath, the inflow of the breath, the still point, the outflow, and then there's a still point. There's a still point at the end and the beginning of each breath. We're just not generally consciously aware of it. But if you pay attention to it a little bit, you'll all of a sudden get to the point, oh, I'm neither in nor out with my breath right now. And that still point helps people alternate their thoughts and their body awareness. So I usually tell people, pick one of those 3, which kind of rings your chimes, you think will really work for you. And then stay with that for a while. Stay in that space and allow your thoughts to run. And when you can get a focal point in edgewise, drop it in. If you try to jam the thoughts away, they'll be like the jack in the box you had when you were a kid, you know, then boom, it pops right back up again. And it's even more overwhelming. So if you'll just allow your thoughts to come and go, drop in a focal point, thoughts come and go, focal point, thoughts, focal point, kind of like a teeter-totter. When we were kids, we had those wonderful things that you'd go up and down on with somebody on the opposite side. Hopefully they were the same size as you and you weren't getting tossed into space. But that back and forth, thought, focal point, thought, focal point. And the more you get into the rhythm of that, you settle into the quiet naturally. If you force the mind to try to make thoughts go away, you will lose that battle. The mind will always go, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. It'll always come back with something to rattle you with. And if you just let it be there, then use the focal point as an alternate. What ends up happening is there's that back and forth, that teeter-totter effect. And then all of a sudden, you notice yourself going less thought, more focal point, less thought, more focal point, then no thought, then just stillness, just silence. And that's the silence and that unbounded consciousness that the Yoga Sutra references. And you don't have to get there. It's not a goal. It's not something you start out for. What you do is you work the process of the meditation, as I mentioned, the teeter-totter effect. Work the process. The rest takes care of itself, because when you get up from that meditation, you will not feel the agitation you had or the distraction you had when you sat down. You will feel what I often refer to as restfully alert. And that is a very different feeling than waking up from a nap. And you will know the difference. You wake up from a nap and you go, whoa, I got hit. Whoa. Oh, it's a sharp contrast. You get up from meditation, it's a smooth contrast back to your activity.
Mm-hmm. I
So
think
I give people, and as people have studied with me know what my rule number one is. Rule number one is never evaluate the meditation in the meditation. It's the wrong time to do it. You're not clear. You're not clear at all enough to make that at that point in time. And that's the one thing I hear the most from people. I sat down to meditate, but I didn't meditate at all. You know, yes, you did. How'd you feel when you got up? Well, I felt pretty good, but I was just chatter the whole time, and I couldn't settle. I go, well, that's fine. That was all working just fine. What? Are you nuts? I didn't get quiet at all. Yeah, that's right. How'd you feel afterwards? I felt kind of still, kind of quiet. Oh, that's the place where you make your evaluation. Because we're not doing this for the sake of the moment of sitting in meditation. We're doing it to enrich our lives. And our lives is where we hang out with the people that we love and care about. And how can we, in great measure, bring that silence up into those relationships? Our stillness washes out on everybody we're with. How that stillness also helps us get clear about what's the most important things in our life to focus on. Our walk, what it is we're here to do, what we're accomplish, and what's in the way of that. Mm-hmm. So that you can make those distinctions about the distractions and not get so sucked into them.
Beautifully.
Those are tips I use with people, and they're the most often ones I have to reinforce as well with people, because I didn't stop thinking the whole time. Good. That's good. That's all right.
Means you're still alive. You have a pulse.
Yeah, you got a body that's generating it. So all good.
Well, I love that you explained about the focal point. I know some other meditation teachers, I know when I teach meditation, sometimes I'll talk to people about mind focus and concentration techniques, mm-hmm. which is very much the focal point mm-hmm. that you're talking about, yep. Having something that you can direct your mental energy toward. Yes. I feel like that babysits the portion of your brain that wants to think too much, and it's mm-hmm. like, here, go do that puzzle off here. Here's your Play-Doh for this, and while that's all going on, there's another part within you that's saying, oh, this is very fascinating. I'm able to, in this mindful moment, focus in on this, and there's something deeper that is happening. I'm noticing my body energy is shifting in these moments when I allow, and there's a state of being that starts to transcend the experience when that happens. But we do have to have that part of the brain occupied. And as you said, allow yourself to think about the meditation later in the sense of analysis or anything. But it's very useful to have that focal point, to have those things to concentrate on. And then you'll notice that without even thinking about it, something else emerges. And you can really, that's where you touch the soul in those moments.
Yep, that's where you touch into that unboundedness. Yep.
Yes. Yes. It's fascinating what happens. And it's hard to describe. Sometimes you'll come out of a meditation and you're like, that was ineffable. I have no idea how to put words to that experience I just had. And I think those are really fun to have. The how do I tell someone I love what I just experienced? I can't.
There's no words for it because it is beyond that realm. It's beyond our thoughts. It's beyond our feelings. It's beyond whatever. So you can know it, but you can't put it. You can't reduce it to words because it's bigger than words.
And the thinking mind tries to grasp and tries to remember, but color isn't the same. The sensations are not the same. It's a completely different experience that many times when I'm meditating that I am perceiving. And for some people, they need that guided meditation in order to have that occupation of now we're going on a trip within. So I think there's value to that.
Oh, absolutely. We in our school use both kinds. We start our days with a silent meditation, but the use of guided meditation is something we do daily too. It's a very different approach, and it has different ends that you're seeking. And sometimes even in those guided meditations end up whoever's chattering away, leading the meditation, you drop out and go into the quiet and they go, oh, what did you talk about? Other times they stay with it. Sometimes guides or teachers come through, loved ones come through, all of that has value. And also in addition to that, we need that time daily where we get into the quiet and the stillness, not for any other purpose, just then to be still, just to be quiet, because it's that the depth of that gives us the depth of ability to perceive, from my experience, wider and wider ranges of things in the universe that come to help us get through this journey we call life.
Absolutely. And moving out of that secular notion into sacred understanding really helps us. I miss how church bells used to on the hour ring, because I know that was an opportunity of beautiful music that was given out, but it was also a way of a reminder to say, turn your attention to God, turn your attention to the divine within you in that moment. And it's just a few bells to get yourself back into that sacred experience that you're having.
Yep.
So people have to do that themselves now.
Yep, that's right. That's true. It's true. Yep. And in homes, they used to have grandfather clocks with a chime at the hour, you could use it the same way, just to that, oh yeah, what's most important here,
And to go into that inner silence in that moment, sometimes the bell, that sound of silence after a bell can produce silence within a person.
Yes, it can. Yep. It's like that. Very Zen moment, a true Zen moment where you just drop right out. Boom.
So in terms of improving silence in these moments, meditation will always be a wonderful venue for that to happen for people, and so will mindfulness. But I wanted to mention also there's a group silence that occurs when people are meditating in a group. When I've looked out on people who are meditating, if I'm the one facilitating, or at church when we're all in prayer, there's this amazing hush that happens on a group level,
Yes.
that we can improve the silence, not just our own silence that we're experiencing, but a group mindset of
Hmm.
silence,
Hmm.
that it can be so
That's
beautiful.
my experience too. You're creating a coherence wave when you do that. It's a large coherence, and the more people you have together, the size of the group does matter. They don't have to be in the same location even, but being focused at the same space and time, um, space meaning the larger space of the planet, but it has a very amplified effect in the coherence wave that's created. It's like if you drop a little pebble in a pond, you get ripples that go out. If you drop a boulder in a pond, you get much more ripples, much bigger, and they go further out. More energy, more impact. And so, yes, the group experience does in fact amplify the silence experience of the silence. The silence is the silence is the silence. It's us that's working with it and creating that coherence coming out of it. It doesn't need us to do anything. We need it desperately, especially these days. We need it, but it is there. It is always there. It is an incredible grace that no matter who you are, no matter where you live, no matter what you've done or haven't done in your life, that silence is there for all of us, and it never leaves us. We leave it regularly, but it does not leave us, and that's a very special thing. I call grace. It's like no matter what, it's always there for us. It's a gift.
It is grace. I'm so glad that you label it in that way, because we have to draw comfort from those moments of grace, that spiritual natural law of grace that transcends karma that we may be feeling in
Mhm.
our lives, that transcends those moments of discord we may feel with
Mhm.
energy in those moments. So when we enter into that inner silence, I feel that we're getting into that acknowledgement of the highest and best. And
Yeah.
as we make that transference into the state of being, that it amplifies for everyone that we meet, and it starts to kind of catch fire, as it were, in a spiritual igniting of the soul that occurs
Mhm.
in if you enter into it. So it does have that um, permeating effect universally.
Mhm.
And
Sure does.
so what we do here, it does matter and will affect the things on the other side of the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are some other meditation things that you think would be important for people to understand in terms of producing or inducing or assisting, whatever word we want to throw in there, I guess.
Well,
The
there's
silence.
a lot of movement meditations that are out there too. And one of my favorites is the Buddhist mindful walking. Uh, Tom Kratzley calls it bodyful walking, and I won't argue with him on that point, because it's a not an either or but a both and.
Well, I've seen him do it around Lilydale and
Yeah, yeah.
the lake.
And you can walk and be totally mindful of all your movements. Just take your mind off of all of the other stuff that's going on at first, and just be mindful of each step you're taking, one after the other, as you're moving your feet, as your feet touch the earth, as your legs, your knees, your whole body, your arms, your breath, everything, just being aware of your movement. And your mind's going to go again, do its thing. It's going to be hopscotching all over the place, right? So you let it go, but then keep bringing it back to, oh yes, we're right here right now with the body. Stay with the moment, stay with that. If you do that for 10-15 minutes, you'll go into that quiet. You will feel massively different than when you started doing that walk. And especially nowadays, where people have more time and you can get outdoors in the Northeast here now where we're living, and there's time where you can get out and do that, instead of just hustling to get your heart rate up or to do this or that, what other people have told you is important, try a mindful walk. Just steady, easy movement through whatever environment you pick,
Mhm.
whatever is available to you. not with other people at this time, which is also what we're not supposed to be doing anyway because of the distancing stuff. So it's the perfect time to do mindful walks out in nature if you can get there. If you can't, then it could be just down in the empty streets because there's not a lot of cars or people out there either, and folks know to leave you alone. So it's really kind of a prime time, if you will, to get out and do some mindful walks. That's one example. I have friends over time that have been into Sufi dancing as well. The dances of universal peace, they're called. The Sufi dancing is an incredible way to get into that unbounded space while you're moving, while you're listening to the music and the beat of the drums and all that sort of stuff. The Native Americans, when they get into their drum circles and they do the chants that they do, oh my goodness, that just transports me right out. So there's so many ways that you can get from the busyness of the mind to the quiet within. There are probably as many as there are people on the planet ways to get there, but it's you just have to pick the ones that, I tell people, pick one prime way to get to the silence that's your way. And if it's the focal points, if it's a movement thing, whatever works best for you, find it, do it in a disciplined fashion on a regular basis, because it's about culturing that silence more and more into your daily activity and reducing the accumulated stress and fatigue that's so much about how we damage our bodies.
Yes.
And getting that stuff out and off of you frees you up. Instead of your nervous system working, what I would call, from my Illinois growing up, where we take the long way around the barn to get places, right? We always, because it's blocked, so we'll take the long way around to get there. When you meditate more, your nervous system starts functioning more like it was intended. It gets closer to its original blueprint of what's there for you to work. So you don't have to take the long way around. You can more directly go from point A to point B. And that, but you've got to find the way that fits your lifestyle, fits your makeup, how you are. And I've coached people for so many years about, just figure out the one that works best for you and then stay with it. Don't hopscotch it, because then your body doesn't know whether you're, as again, another Midwestern colloquialism, doesn't know whether you're a foot or you're a horseback. It's like, what are we doing today? Oh, I want to try, I want to experiment all these things. No. Stop with the experimentation and settle back down into a way that works for you, that fits your particular lifestyle, and then let the rest of it be there. If you want to experiment later on, but have this practice that's steady, consistent, because in that consistency is where you get the greatest value, the greatest benefit will come to you.
I like to explain to people who are wanting to develop spiritually that it comes down to right practice and right intention. Mm-hmm. Those are the two main ingredients for success. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand, when it comes to the right intention, when you choose the right practice, it all starts to come together. It weaves so beautifully. And that you will find, as you go through your spiritual development phases, that certain practices are always there. They're always almost on a ritual level within yourself of prayer, that helps to focus that energy positively. And it applies to meditation. It applies to that inner stillness as well. That when we stick with what we know what works for inner silence, it will help you throughout your life. And there will be moments where you do say, I've decided to incorporate this during this particular phase, and you find glory in it. But you'll then go back. It's like a good book that you have always kept on your bedside table, that you go back to and read again and again. It's like the scripture of your life in those moments. So it is, what you're saying, Mark, it really makes a lot of sense to have that right practice, to have that right intention, to stick with what really calls to your soul, to enter into that communion with your divine self. Mm-hmm. So really beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, should we recap for people and in case there's anything else you wanted to add in about improving that inner stillness, that inner silence, that interior experience? This will be a great time to share that with folks.
Well, what I've been telling people lately is you got all the time you in the world right now. I mean, we're away from our distractions, external ones of places to go, things to do. You can't do that stuff. So with the exception of people who are in the medical field and first responders, they are swamped right now. And this is not the time for them to get a lot of downtime, because they're in the uptime, big time uptime. So I'm speaking primarily to folks that are sequestered away in their homes and are finding time on their hands. Excuse me. Some people struggling with loneliness and disconnection, can't touch folks they normally touch, whether it's kids, grandkids, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, whatever. That disconnect. One of the most important things you can do right now is carve out some time to get connected with yourself and find the quiet within, and do the meditative practices that we've been talking about here today, or something else that fits your particular lifestyle and your way that you want to approach it, your intention, as you said. And then be about it in a disciplined fashion. Now that you've got this extra time on your hands, use it wisely, use it well, to bring about an enrichment of your life, instead of, oh, it's not all the things I can't do, but it's about, oh, I can do this now. And turn that, if you will, curse into a blessing. This disease that's upon us is a dis-ease. We can turn it into an ease, because we can actually sit down and be still in ways that we couldn't before. So I would say to people, make the commitment to doing what you need to do that feeds your soul right now. Because it's in that moment where you get into that stillness, you feel not only the loneliness falling away, because you feel the connectedness to everybody, everything else on the planet. And you feel that stillness in a way that feeds you and gives you solace, gives you peace. And we're so much in need of that in the world, even before all of this. Right now, it's just changing the whole dynamic. So I tell people, make use of the time, be disciplined about it, focus. And you don't need lots of time. You just need to make sure you carve time and space for it in your life. And you'll get a grand benefit, especially as we come out of this. This isn't going to last, this dynamic we're in right now. It's going to change again and again. And the thing is the more you're still inside, the more you can roll with whatever changes we have coming, good, bad, or ugly, whatever they are. You'll be able to roll with it. And I think, Willa, that is, in a nutshell, make this a piece of your life. If you haven't before and you've had all the world's excuses for not doing it, now you don't have those excuses. You got the room in your life, take advantage of it, get into the quiet, make a practice of it daily. And then when you do that, you will have a blessing that goes out across all dimensions of your life, because it holistically lifts us up instead of the mind and all of the fearful stuff, which actually is a major contraction of our energy.
Yes.
Love and compassion, the silence, all of that, and the grace and all of that is a massive expansion of our human experience. And so that would be my summary of where we are right now, and encouraging people, make the most of this instead of the least of this time.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, Mark. We really appreciate you sharing your experience and your thoughts about these things, and how helping to create healthy patterns of silence within is so crucial, as you said, during this time, and it will be something that will sustain you going forward. Each one of us will feel more sustained and ready for whatever is to come. And this too shall pass, as you said, this too shall pass. This is life has its dramas. And we move out of those illusionary states that can pull us into dramas and more into that state of the soul. So I'm so glad you shared today about inner silence. It really is such
My
a
pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks
well,
for having me on. It was good. It was a good conversation. Yeah.
great,
Yeah.
great. Well,
Yeah.
thank
And
you everyone.
timely, right?
Very timely. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. And as I said, you can like and share and follow. My Facebook page is Willa White Medium, and there are other shows that are posted out of Lilydale here, part of the Lilydale radio family. You can look at those, at least audio of those, on blogtalkradio.com/Lilydale Radio. And tune in next week on my show where my guest will be Sharon Hill, and we'll be talking about the vibrational frequency of health. So another great topic in store for all of you. Thanks for everyone for your love, kind attention, many blessings to all of you. And thanks again, Mark.
My pleasure. And blessings to everyone who was enjoying your show. It's great. Thank you, Willa.
Thanks, Mark. Bye-bye, everyone.